Why, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rose Virtual from the Southern California News Group. We're your interactive program to give you all the background, insights, and tips we can to help you enjoy the experience of the Tournament of Roses. Yesterday, we talked with our journalists about the Rose Bowl, but today we're mining the expertise of our journalists and a special guest to learn more about the parade itself. I'm Sam Dunn. I'm the senior editor for premium content here at the Southern California News Group. And before we get started, I want to say thank you to our Reader Rewards subscribers for supporting our programs. And hey, if you're not a subscriber, why not? Go to scng.com/subscribe to find your local paper, and please join us as a subscriber. So before we get rolling, really, I need to tell you a few things. As an attendee, you're going to be muted to allow for the free flow of conversation among the guests. But if you have questions, and we really hope you do, use the Q&A feature on the Zoom toolbar on your screen. And certainly, if you want to make comments and connect with other audience members, use the chat feature found there as well. The session will be videotaped, and a link and the slides will be sent to you so you can share it or just revisit some of your favorite moments. It's also posted at scng.com/virtual events. And that's where you can find all of our past shows and see what's coming up next in our live journalism roster. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce today's co-host, Larry Wilson, who for the past 12 years, actually not the past 12 years, but for 12 years was the editor of the Pasadena Star News, overseeing Rose Parade coverage. And now he's on our news group's editorial board. Today, he'll be helping set the stage for us about the history and significance of the Tournament of Roses. So, hey, welcome, Larry. Hello.
Oh, thanks, Sam. Thanks. Happy New Year. Nice to be with you.
Well, I'm glad you're here. I'll let you get to it.
All right. Bill, are you there?
I'm here, Larry. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation to chat.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you were able to join us. I know from the social medias that you were up skiing in Jackson Hole, and you somehow made it out of there.
Yeah, we threaded a needle, and we were very, very fortunate compared to so many people who are still traveling.
And that means you weren't flying Southwest.
Correct.
Well, welcome back to Pasadena, where we both live and have known each other for a long time, since you were a professor here at Caltech.
Yep.
Now you're a history professor, former chair of the department at USC, and a real expert on California culture and the culture of the entire West, but especially California. And you didn't grow up in Pasadena like I did, but you came here as an academic and have stayed in Southern California with the Institute on California in the West at SC and at the Huntington. And you live a couple blocks really from the Rose Parade. And
I do.
So it was in my bones, the fact I just grew up with the Rose Parade, but as somebody who came here to work a little bit later in life, what did you think of the Rose Parade, and what had you heard of the Rose Parade and the whole tournament before you came here, and what did you think of it when you got here?
Well, I didn't grow up proximate to it like you did, Larry, but I did grow up with it because I watched it on TV as a kid in Colorado. So New Year's Day was Rose Parade Day. So I knew it, at least through the television, and I knew the kind of pomp and excitement of the whole thing. And then my first trip to the Rose Parade was when I was in my early 20s, when I was here in Pasadena on a research trip, and friends of mine said, let's walk to the Rose Parade. And I remember being very excited that you could do that. So walked right up, and I go every year. I walk up every year, the few blocks from our house now. And I really enjoy it. And I like digging into the kind of long tradition of this institution in Southern California. And I'm very interested in seeing and thinking about how it's changed over well over 100 years.
It was 1890, yeah, the first one. And so that's something I think we should spend a lot of our time talking about. Why Pasadena? Why did the Tournament of Roses start in Pasadena and not, for instance, in much larger Los Angeles next door to us?
Well, these traditions of these kinds of parades and festivals, of course, go way, way, way back in history. They are a way, at least in the American West prism that I'm most interested in, they are a way for a community to announce itself to the world that they have both the time and money and logistical prowess to put on something like this. Los Angeles in the mid 1890s started La Fiesta de Los Angeles, which is a long parade of sort of historical tableau that announced Los Angeles as an arrived city with great ambitions. And then Pasadena did the same with the Tournament of Roses to distinguish itself really as not Los Angeles. I mean, Pasadena, we now think of it as so contiguous to Los Angeles, but it once was quite a ways away in terms of the logistical challenges to get here if you were in downtown Los Angeles. And Pasadena had a different ethos, a different sort of sensibility. And so putting on the tournament in the 1890s was a way for Pasadena to say, pay attention to us as well. We've got something special here.
Yeah, I think Pat Morrison in the Times wrote about La Fiesta de Los Angeles recently, that this parade didn't last. I mean, the Rose Parade is still with us 2 centuries on. The LA festival didn't last. Something about it didn't stick.
Yeah, I think there's all kinds of reasons to sort of dig into why that is. I think they're very difficult to pull off because logistically they're challenging, of course. That gets more true every year. I think in some respects, La Fiesta de Los Angeles ran out of kind of cultural gas. It ran out, it told a certain kind of story, and it wasn't able to kind of morph and change with the times. The Rose Parade is old, it's traditional, it's institutional. But I do think over the course of 120 some odd, 130 years or so, we've seen it change. And so that's probably part of the reason why it's lasted. And also it's beloved. It's really beloved.
So here's my theory. So as we know, the tournament was started on a whim a few months before January by Professor Holder. I don't think he was really a professor.
No.
Pasadena is lousy with people who aren't really professors, like Thaddeus Lowe. They get called professor. You are an actual professor.
Yeah, as far as I know.
So Francis Holder down at the Valley Hunt gets this idea, gets a bunch of people to put it together, and the Valley Hunt Club put it on itself for several years. Then the old money folks of the Valley Hunt said, whoa, this is way too much work for us to do, and sort of passed it on to the middle class burghers who created what we now know as the Tournament of Roses Association, which for those viewers who don't know, sometimes people even in Southern California, certainly around the country, think this whole thing is put on by this massive paid staff. That tournament is almost entirely a volunteer organization with 800 or so people who wear cream-colored white suits on New Year's Day and spend hundreds of thousands of hours, considering how many people there are a year, putting this thing on. It's all volunteer. But again, it went from this very upper class, Pasadena founded by people with so much money that they could just winter out here to get away from whether it was Indiana or Chicago, like the Wrigleys, or New York. And those folks didn't want to do the work, but it created this vast middle class of serving the rich people there. Those are the people who have carried on the tradition from the 1890s until here we are in 2022. So that's the Wilson theory of.
No, I think you're right, Larry. I also think it's really interesting, those early slides that we saw as the program began. It's interesting to track the bit of whimsy that's in the parade, ostriches and some kind of funny costumes on the parade goers, etc. There's a long tradition of whimsy, which makes it a lot of fun as well. So I think your transition from the upper class of the Valley Hunt Club going to riding hounds in the Arroyo onto these burgers, or moving down into middle class sensibility, it fits. I also think there's something about when this thing is. It's deliberately at the beginning of a new year. It ties into the perception of California as a place to start all over, a place to rejuvenate, a place to, expand your horizons. So it's got that kind of let's use the new year as a vehicle by which we're going to change our lives.
I have always wondered why the tournament didn't ever go in anything like the direction, let's say, of another parade we can think of at Mardi Gras in New Orleans. And I suppose one reason it didn't turn into sort of a bacchanal was the temperance of Pasadenans at the time. Am I not right that around 1890, Pasadena was famed for having no bars?
Well, certainly a lot of churches that pushed the temperance line, both Pasadena and South Pass when it was created. So I think you're probably right about that. And I'd be remiss to not point out that that line of whimsy, there are people in Pasadena that you and I are both familiar with and respect who thought that the Rose Parade didn't have enough. So they started the Doodah, which is
and the Doodah
a
Parade
remarkable thing.
Got started was partially because of what's happening this year, Never on Sunday. Viewers may know that the parade and the game, the Rose Bowl game this year, are on Monday, the 2nd of January, 2023, not because Never on Sunday had to do with the churches that are all along Colorado Boulevard, and also just sort of a reverence. It was a more or less Christian town, but it still could have turned into more of a bacchanal. The Doodah folks realized there wasn't going to be, the people who 40 something years ago founded the Doodah Parade realized there wasn't going to be a parade on the 1st, and then just created their own one in what we now call Old Pasadena, which at the time was a rundown downtown that was about to be torn down. And thank God it wasn't. But so at a place called Chromo's Bar, they started this, and the Doodah is still going on. And you're right, that's at first, let me tell you, the tournament folks were not best pleased with the Doodah Parade. And now they can say, oh, it's all in good fun and stuff. But it was considered a parody of what, as I say, the incredible hard work that they do. And when you would have a parade coming along with people with nothing organized, with people drinking on the streets and carrying briefcases and a parody of a marching band and stuff, it was not necessarily well received. There is certainly a détente between the Rose Parade and the Doodah Parade for now. But the Tournament of Roses, the Rose Parade, it seems to me, although it's not much talk about, but in the midst of a kind of massive change in the people who run it and the people who they pick for grand marshals and stuff. I wrote a column the other day about picking Gabby Giffords as Amy Wainscott, the current president, who is a woman, the 3rd or 4th woman to be president of the Tournament of Roses in all these 130 years. There's been a Latina president, there's been an African American president, there's been an Asian American president, and these 4 women. All these have been in the last 12 or so years, after a grand tradition of white men insurance agents being president. So there's going to be a gay president of the Tournament of Roses within the next couple of years. There was, famously, my friend Louise Siskel, there was a Rose Queen who not only wore glasses, not only was Jewish, but came out as LGBTQ after she was chosen to be the Rose Queen. All those things were unprecedented, and they all happened a couple of years ago. And
and as you know, Larry, I mean, institutions become fusty if they don't change. So the challenge is to make sure that these kinds of changes are baked in, that this kind of inclusiveness continues. You see it on the streets, people coming to watch the parade. It is a celebration of Southern California's diversity. That's part of the fun for me, is to go up there the night before and just see everybody who comes out for the parade. And then, of course, the representation across the country of my favorite part of the parade is the high school bands, because those kids are so excited to be here and they come from all over the country. So yeah, these changes are perfectly consistent with an institution that's trying hard not to be fusty.
The cliche about the starting of the tournament in 1890 was that it was basically done as an advertisement for Southern California. Pasadena had been incorporated in 1886. There was real estate to be sold. And when people heard about it, they came. And then there was still real estate to be sold in the 1950s when it was first televised. But boy, they say that seeing Pasadena on the television really drove a lot of people to come to Southern California in our marvelous weather. Do you think that's just a trope, or do you think that's really true?
I think it's entirely true. Because remember, look, it's January 1st, generally. It's outdoors. It's generally spectacularly beautiful. It's built around nature in terms of the roses themselves that started it off, and now all the organic products that are used to make those floats. So it's built around this statement that we have a special relationship with nature, which that may not be true. We push nature around a lot down here in Southern California.
So many of the roses come from Ecuador now.
Exactly. So, but the vision of that is this is a special place, and of course the Rose Parade rises with a couple of publicity mechanisms, like a 4-color postcard, like cheaper photography that can be mass produced, like beautiful lithography. So even before television, the world is going to be saturated with images of Pasadena on the 1st of January. And oh my goodness, I suspect the beauty of the place would take your breath away.
Yeah, and it does, and those are still real flowers on all those floats. We've had stories in the paper about how inflation is making it tougher to do those floats, about how it's just a big logistical thing. The dangers posed by terrorism after 9/11 completely changed the security picture for the tournament. There's the group of volunteers, the White Suiters, have had to put up with a lot of changes over the years, not just your random float that stalls and has to be towed out of the way, but we have had remarkably good weather over the years. There's a little tiny bit of threat of rain for this coming Monday, but it seems like I'll bet it'll be cold but not raining. The year that my grandfather was president in 1955, 11 months before I was born, Elmer's Parade, it poured. I mean, it was just buckets. I've seen the pictures of him in his white suit with a big hat on, and it's just he got lost from the his Grand Marshal was Earl Warren, and they stopped off for a hot toddy at Louis Edwards' house in between the parade and the game, and the Secret Service was watching the Supreme Court justice, and they lost him. But they showed up at the game anyway, prepped by those hot toddies. So it does rain sometimes, but usually the weather is glorious. And I'm afraid there's very few empty lots in Pasadena to move to for those folks around the country who are watching the parade. But we still welcome them to come and watch.
Yeah, I make a point of, when I walk up every year, I make a point of trying to meet some of these people who come from far and wide. There are a lot of RVs near our house where they parked for a day or two or longer, or you can just spot people who aren't local. And I like talking to them. And one year when I was oh, sorry, Larry, go ahead.
No, it's fun to greet them. I said, tell about that 1 year.
Well, when I was a young instructor at Caltech, I lived near where the South Pasadena float was being put together, and I went over and volunteered. And it's not easy. I mean, I had to be taught how to put the flowers or whatever else we were using onto the chicken wire frame, et cetera. And these volunteers who had put in many years of doing this work were expert at it. I mean, they were as if they were professional florists, and maybe they were, but I think they were just local folks who just loved it.
I understand they're called the pedal pushers. Yeah, that's one thing I've never done with the tournament is put a flower on. But well, Bill, we're coming to the end of our time here. We're going to pass it back over to Sam. But it's really fun to talk with you about the Rose Parade. I hope to see you over the New Year's holiday
Sure
somewhere
enough.
around town. And there'll be a lot of people from Utah and from Pennsylvania in town. And I think it'll be, no matter how blustery it is, I think it'll be a little warmer and nicer here than where they come from.
Yeah.
So,
Always a pleasure, Larry.
well, it's so good to be with you again. Happy New Year
Sure.
to you
Same.
and yours. And we'll pass it back to Sam.
Thanks, gentlemen. Thanks, Larry. Thanks, Bill. And I have to say, with relatives in Pennsylvania, I would rather be here any day of the week. Oh my gosh. Anyhow, listen, thanks again. Now I'd like to introduce Ryan Carter. He's the city editor of the Pasadena Star News, and he has a special guest coming on. And Ryan, you're going to tell us about this year's parade, are you not?
Yes, this year's parade, January 2nd.
All right.
Hello.
I'll let you get started.
All right. Thanks very much, Sam. What an interesting discussion. I'm Ryan Carter. I'm the city editor for the Pasadena Star News. And I am lucky enough to have Brennan Dixon with me today. He's our city reporter for the city of Pasadena. So most of the time, you're going to find him in city hall circles, out in the community, working the beat. But this time of year, Brennan is roaming around, just soaking up that parade buzz, which of course is not just all about the parade day itself, but which is on both ends of the parade, either side of the parade, the days leading up to it. And basically, it's like a whole year of preparations leading up to it. And then there's some events even after the parade. So without further ado, Brennan, welcome.
Thank you, Brian. Hello, world. I'm Brennan Dixon, cover Pasadena for the Star News. Sam called me a special guest, hardly a special guest. Bill, definitely special. But yeah, like Ryan said, I've been smelling the roses. I've been out in the city, a couple cities, Irwindale, La Cañada, Flint Ridge, Pasadena. There are floats everywhere. There's floats down in Downey. But yeah, just getting a feel for everything. I was up in Sierra Madre talking to Case Happington. They're working on their float. They're one of the few self-built teams, and so they were showing me how they worked styrofoam to cut down cost. Because like Larry and Bill were talking about, everything is coming from Ecuador nowadays, so things are expensive. Shipping is expensive. The flights, it's messing everything up. So yeah, I've definitely been out experiencing it all. We can jump into it if you want, if the audience wants. But yeah, it's certainly a wonderful time of year.
Brennan, let's talk floats real quick. So tell us what you're seeing out there. Tell us about the effort to make a float happen. What are you seeing, just both for among volunteers on the local, like self-built level, city-built level, but also on the larger level?
It takes thousands of man hours. No matter who's doing it, it takes thousands of flowers. So we have, I can split them into two groups for you. We have the self-built and we have the professionals. So the volunteers, La Cañada, Flint Ridge, Sierra Madre, they're in warehouses parked under the 210 freeway, wherever they can find space to have these 75-foot floats, these 100-foot floats, 50, whatever it is. They're giant, filled with bears that are towering, raccoons that are mischievous and dressed in pompous skirts. And they're colorful, they're natural, and they're using whatever they can get their hands on to complete them. Moss in the Philippines was a popular item. Having trouble getting it this year. Okay, so how can we that insert pampas grass, cinnamon, mashing up the sesame seed buns on your Burger King burger buns, the sesame seeds on your Burger King buns. That's in use. It is truly anything and everything. They're ironing rubber to make it look like bees. It's really cool. I'm not a creative guy, even though I write, but I just take what people say and regurgitate it. But these people they're just doing magnificent things with everyday items. And then when you see the floats finalized, it's like, wow, that I would have never have guessed this was just a metal piece of hunk just sitting on the side of the freeway that has been turned into a bear scootering while his kids are behind him in the wind. Like it's just a fun time. But so that's the self-built, and what it looks like out there, it's community. You're under the freeway, you're walking up, you're signing up just because you're with your longtime partner and we don't have anything to do, we're retirees. And you're just out there talking to people, meeting people. Like Bill's mentioned, the flights were a hassle. He thankfully got home. Some people in La Cañada, they're getting volunteers because people have an extra day in town. They don't know what to do. They see 3 giant raccoons parked under the freeway. They go see what it is. Oh, we can go help decorate. It's the Rose Parade. Who doesn't want to partake in the Rose Parade? But even more than that, out in Sierra Madre, there are people who come out of town, out of state every year. Kay, she's led the decorating team for 20 years, almost 20 years. She told me about Minnesota Bob and Texas Greg. I'm getting their name wrong. Tennessee Jackie was a real one. She's real. But they come from out of state and they help. They're experienced welders, they're painters. It's just something that it's a tradition for them. And though they're not Sierra Madre residents, they're still family. And that's what Kay said. It's a labor of love. It takes hours. You mentioned it. It starts now. The La Cañada Flint Ridge is having a design contest. They wanted me to publicize that. If you have an idea, throw it out now. We haven't even hit this Rose Parade, and we're thinking about the next float
already.
That is how it is every year. It's nonstop for these people, and it shows the dedication. It shows the community. It shows Downey, the city. They dedicated funding from their general fund, because like they said, it's a feather in our cap. It's an institution. It's a crown jewel. So that's the smaller community side. But then we have the professionals out in Irwindale, giant factories. It's an industry. When the pandemic shut down, I believe it was Fiesta. They had to lay off over 90% of their staff because we're not building floats. These cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. If you're building 12 floats, I know this year I've read Lisa Jacobs' fabulous reporting that they're only doing about 7 floats when they usually do a dozen, and that's because of staffing and just costs and just pandemic related issues. We're very much still feeling the effects. So yeah, but it is. We are in full gear. Bob Milano told me yesterday that there was some delay for the flowers, but they have a plan B, they have a plan C. Everything is in go. And yeah, we're just in Deco week. It's the final week. We have Band Fest coming up tomorrow at eQuest Fest. Hit me, Sam. You got a question.
Thanks, Brandon. Before you get going on Equifest and the bands and everything else, I need to ask a question from Pam Kreider, who wants to know what happens to all of the float coverings after the parade.
So you really try to reuse it. You unpack the flowers. So the flowers, you will vial 10,000 flowers for a float. That just approximately. That's probably an underestimation. But they put them in a vial, and then that's somebody's job. A lady told me yesterday, I don't remember her name, Diane. She worked with La Cañada Flint Ridge. Her first job was pouring the fluoride or some flour to keep it fresh. She'd pour it in the water, cold water, in the freezing cold in Pasadena, carry this heavy bucket as a 10-year-old, drop it off, and repeat the process. And her hands would be numb, and she'd have pain all over her. But that was her first experience, and she's still doing it. So it wasn't that bad. But it's so like they have a way to keep the flowers fresh. They want to reuse as much as possible, especially these small organizations like the Sierra Madre. They will take apart the styrofoam, they'll stack it up, and they'll park it's a metal frame, and it will change from year to year, but they'll park the metal frame in the warehouse, and the sesame seed will get taken off, and it's all very nicely packaged. When you go into even the large professional float building organizations, they had a dinner in there last year, well, every year, but you can see old windmills there. You can see old animal frames, because a raccoon can kind of be a dog. People thought a raccoon was a squirrel yesterday, so maybe next year they do something with squirrels. So it's really very much a reduce, reuse, because it's expensive. You want to use what you can. So I believe most of them are parked at an old depot, or they're at the float builders warehouse. They're giant airplane size hangars. So
Right.
Brennan, I've got a and Sam, I wanted to acknowledge Deborah Kohler, who has posted in our chat here for the Zoom. We got an amazing email from her, and one of the things about the Rose Parade, Brennan, and I'm sure you come across this in the years that you've covered it, and sort of the lead up to the parade, is that it's really kind of a unifying force in Southern California in a lot of ways. People come up, they speak, they want to know about the history, they want to talk about the philosophy of the parade, the themes of the parade, obviously. And we got an email the other day from Debbie Kohler, whose mother, Dolores Jean Bruback, was the Rose Queen in 1942. But that year, because of the war, the parade was canceled, but her mom was queen that year. And so I wanted to let everybody know out there that we have a story in the works on that. It is definitely coming, but it's just an example of like the outpouring of community and history that this tradition sort of brings out every year, much in line with what Bill and Larry were talking about. Brennan, I apologize. I didn't want to.
No, I'm amazed. But like the parade has been canceled. It got canceled in the pandemic, and it got canceled during the war. Those are the only times it's been canceled. And to know somebody's mother who was queen during that year, wow. I love this stuff. I love history, and I love telling stories. I love community. And as I said, that's what the Rose Parade is about. Don Lee, 75 years he's been going. I think this is his 75th, and maybe his 76th. But
wait, let me get this straight. This guy's been going every year for like 75 years.
75 years.
Yeah.
And yeah, he has the trinkets, he has the memorabilia. Like it's an institution. I talking to Larry and Bill, or not talking to him, but hearing them talk. Bill didn't grow up in proximity to it. I grew up in Fresno, and I love college football. If you ever need a college football take in the newsroom, I'll give it to you. So I love college football, and UCLA was my team. I think it was because the Trojans were always dominating Fresno, and they had Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart, and I like an underdog. So I was always fascinated by UCLA, and they didn't go to very many Rose Bowls, but I loved the Rose Bowl. It was always a place I wanted to be, place I wanted to go. Still haven't caught a game there. It's okay. But it's just a really fantastic experience. So coming to the Rose Parade last year for the first time, and I walked the whole parade route because our office was at the end almost. And I had to go to the tournament house to meet LeVar Burton, try to catch him as he was walking out. And we were out there at 4 a.m. and I left the office at 5, and people camp. I know you know this, Ryan, but I don't know if the audience know this. People will show up at 5 p.m. and claim a spot on Colorado Boulevard and sit out there all night with their family in the freezing cold just to watch this parade. Like, that's dedication. That's true community. And I talked to those people when they were setting up. I talked to those people when I was walking the parade route, and all of them, it's just a blast. Nobody is upset. It's like Disneyland. It's the happiest place on earth. I think that's the only time you could rival Disneyland.
So yeah. And so now you've got me kind of curious about sort of the events that kind of lead up to the parade, and maybe a little bit of detail about the parade itself. Now, Bill and Larry were talking about just the bands, just the and just seeing them perform and the joy that they have in those performances. But we have a chance to actually see these bands perform, not just during the parade, but before the parade, right?
Oh, yes. That actually struck a chord with me too. And when he mentioned that, my jokes are terrible. I know, I'm not even a dad yet. But the Band Fest is coming up, and I believe there are 3 days instead of 2 this year. It starts tomorrow. I will be out there. I went last year. It poured down rain, like downpour. And some bands didn't play. They were in their
This is at PCC, by the way, right?
PCC. Yeah, it's at
okay.
PCC.
Pasadena
Sorry.
City Hall. Okay.
It's at PCC. They were dressed in their plastic gear. Some didn't play their instruments, but the ones who did, let me tell you, they rocked it. Tennessee State. I got to give a shout out to Tennessee State. They came out. There were people from Iowa, Pennsylvania, small towns, and Alabama. Giant bands, like college-sized bands, I feel, and they're just in playing the performance of their life. They go around the track one time, and then they do a show, and that was in the rain. It may be different on a full scale, but it's an experience. I love live music. It's $20. You can, I think kids get in free. So
right, and this is on 2 days, right? It's Friday and Saturday.
No, I believe it's 3. I believe it's Friday, Saturday, and the 31st. I believe there was a Band Fest 3. I checked the website.
Okay, interesting. And that's because the parade itself is on the 2nd this year.
On the 2nd, yeah. So we're getting a little, like Mayor Gordo said, it's an extended bit of fun this year.
Got it. Now, there's also the equestrian sort of. Oh, hi. Hello, Sam.
Hey, before we move on to the horses, which you might not know, but that's my favorite part.
Okay.
We do have a question from Pam again. How are the bands selected for that?
Oh, so okay, everything is done by a committee. There's float selection committees, there's rose court selection committees, but the president, I believe, has the largest hand in selecting everything. They select the grand marshal personally, and like I know the president this year went to her hometown, and that the band is performing there, or at least somewhere from the state. So it's just their choice. I know people apply, but maybe some stand out. I know the Rose Parade helps them out a little bit, but it's up to bands to fundraise and raise money to get out here. And there's a lot of unique gear, like the drums will all say Rose Parade on the side. So it's all a selection process. You apply, you gotta get selected. You have to stand out, and because these bands are amazing. They were large. They had the full garb on. I went to a performing arts school, and I don't know if my band would be Rose Parade material. No offense, Lincoln. Don't come for me.
You know, it's interesting because I really, last year was my sort of first really true. Actually, I should take that back. Last year was my first real year sort of getting a front row perspective of the parade. And you know, the television coverage is great, right? We see those bands, we see kind of the press box shot of the bands, but boy, when you see those bands right up live front on, right off of Colorado Boulevard, there is something about the power of the horns, the tubas, the drums,
the bass just hitting you. Yes, that's what I'm saying. No, it's beautiful, and that's why the PCC Band Fest experience is so great, because you're in the community college stadium, and they're right there. And I would say the only time you would get as close is during the Rose Parade if you get a front row seat. And I got lucky last year. Again, last year was my first experience covering the Rose Parade. It was my first year at the paper. So I know it was coming after a pandemic. Crowds were not as large, according to the fans who I talked to. And they were surprised that you could just show up at 7 a.m. and get a front row seat. They were telling me usually it's about 5-6 rows deep. But so I was lucky last year. I literally got to high five Tennessee State and tell them hi as they were walking by, because I met them at Band Fest. So come out to Band Fest. You get to meet people, get to talk to people.
Likewise, I could probably say the same thing about the equestrians, right?
Like, I didn't get to see the equestrians. We got to bring Sam back in because we have to show him love. The girlfriend loves horses. I do know somebody who knows the farrier, but please hype up the horses. Somebody, Sam, get back in here. Ryan, somebody tell me what I'm missing for Equest Fest.
Well, you go ahead, Sam.
I have no information other than I just love watching them. I'm a horse owner, and so that is always the highlight of the parade. But I'll tell you, they bring on breeds that you don't see very commonly other places. They bring in draft breeds, they bring in Spanish breeds, Andalusians, Pasofinos, all of this pageantry, equestrian pageantry that's really quite fascinating.
Are they
well,
jumping? Is it kind of like a rodeo experience?
Equifest?
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
it's more quadrilles, it's more
Okay.
patterns that the horses perform, and it's a really special experience, especially if you love horses. But you know, you don't have to know anything about them to appreciate the
No,
beauty.
no.
You know,
Majestic animals, definitely.
Right. And you know you're going to see them, you know, and they will be the stars of the parade, like, you know, on the second. So you kind of get that you know, it's sort of advanced look at
Oh yeah, I remember seeing the Norco Cowgirls team.
right?
Yeah.
Well, look at groups from all over the country. We've got the Compton Cowboys. We've got people from New York. We've got international ponies, the Connemara ponies that come in. It's really pretty fascinating. And I'll get off in a moment, I swear, but you got me started on horses.
No, you're here now. You're part of the team.
What I love about it is, as Bill and Larry were talking about, it harkens back to this agricultural history of Southern California, to the actual history of the parade itself, to an olden time, if you will, when horses were the primary mode of transportation and part of our daily lives. So anyway.
I think it's funny you brought that up, because I specifically read in a story this year, when it flipped to being automobile centric. So it was probably 90 years ago.
Yeah,
So,
lost a lot of the pizzazz, but also manure. I'm just going to leave on manure.
Oh, I did want to say we have to show love to the Pooper Scooper team, because I interviewed some of them last year. There were a group of kids, volunteers, and they said they knew it was a job that needed to be done, and they're going to get it done. And they were out there picking up the horse poop.
And we do have a story. We have a story coming this year, actually. I think it's there is somebody who's been doing it oh man, for like decades.
Yeah, the lead volunteer. No, I saw the bloodline for this.
The lead volunteer.
We won't spoil it, but yeah, that's
right.
A good one.
And so we've got a story, you know, and these people are just as devoted as any white suitor out there, any other volunteer who makes this thing happen, you know, because somebody's got to do that job.
Oh
right?
Yeah, no, and that's what's amazing is how clean the parade route is after everything's done. You have no idea the parade happened just hours after.
Right.
Everybody's
within a couple of hours. Yeah, that is.
And then they start putting the light fixtures back on, and then everything's just clear.
It's like back to normal, right? Cars back on the boulevard. By the way, just so folks know, the eQuest Fest is tomorrow, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. and it's rain or shine. And there's the actual equestrian show is noon to 2 p.m. Tickets are $20, VIP $45, and parking is $15. And it's I believe it's at the LA Equestrian Center.
Yeah,
so
that one
just so everybody knows. By the way, speaking of rain, and I know Larry and Bill touched on this a little bit in their discussion. So there's actually a chance of a little bit of rain on Monday, which is an extremely rare occurrence, right? So we're talking, I think we reported yesterday, I think it happened like, let me check my notes here. I think it was like 10 times in like the entire history of the parade. And most of those times have been fairly like it hasn't like destroyed or delayed the parade, right? But it is interesting to note that it might. So for all you parade goers out there, bring an umbrella, and you might even keep it a little bit more handy after the parade, because the last forecast I saw, we're talking about like afternoon showers, right? So the parade might actually escape rain this year, but the after events might not. That includes the Rose Bowl, maybe the float viewing event as well. We haven't talked much about the theme of this year's parade. Brennan, can you talk a little bit about that?
Turning the corner, selected by President Amy Wainscott. Again, tournament, the president gets to select the theme and the Grand Marshal, likely some other things. But turning the corner, means different things to different people. Lisa Jacobs wrote a story on what it means to turn the corner every year at Orange Grove Boulevard. For those who don't know, it's where the TV cameras are set up. You get a wonderful view of these floats turning the corner, and boom, they're all coming down the hill. It's a wonderful setup.
That's that corner, Orange Grove and Colorado, was it?
Yep,
Yeah,
yep,
right.
the turn. Insider info, last year I got in trouble because I was talking to some flag bearers for a float, and the B2 flew overhead. And so I was rushing back to the office, and I thought I was allowed to walk on the side of the street. No, you are not allowed to be on the street. And I was about to turn the corner of TV corner, and I got snatched off into the stands. So I was almost on TV.
Oh no!
Okay. Right? Almost fulfilled a lifelong dream. But yeah, so turning the corner, it's something that's known in Rose Parade jargon. You know, we're turning the corner, but also we're coming off a pandemic. Life has changed. Like obviously we're trying to turn the corner, turn the page on life, start anew. So I think that's a large part of, you know, what it means to the president. She talked about that during her breakfast. We'll see if it happens. I know COVID's still lingering. There's masking is highly recommended. I'll throw that out there for the Pasadena Public Health Department. They keep throwing that out. But we know what to do now. You know, get vaxxed, wash your hands. Yeah, dress warm because flu's
Pam
going around.
Kreider has asked a question about the Grand Marshal, and so we would be very remiss if we did not talk a little bit about the Grand Marshal this year.
Gabby Giffords.
Pam, I know we're running short on time, so I see it.
Yeah, I'll speed it up. It's Gabby Giffords. It was a surprising pick. We knew we were given a hint from desert to the sea. I think it was. I guess John Legend, but it wasn't John Legend, but it was Gabby Giffords. A wonderful choice. Obviously fits into the theme of turning the corner. A woman who was shot and who has dedicated her life to gun violence and just regaining the ability just to live again. And it's very inspirational. She spoke during the Grand Marshal selection, and yeah, we have a fantabulous profile coming up on her and her husband.
Yeah.
Or Kelly, right?
That was great, you guys. Thank you so much for the information. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Bill, Larry, Brennan, Ryan, thank you so much. And again, you're going to find more great information and insights in our newspaper coverage and also in the Rose magazine for subscribers of the Southern California News Group. And if you don't want to, are you guys seeing that? I can't see myself. Yeah, here it
Oh,
is.
yeah.
And if you don't want to miss out, please go to scng.com/subscribe and find your local paper. Meanwhile, you can catch up on all our virtual programs that you might have missed. Shame on you. By going to scng.com/virtual events. They are always free, you guys. Or if you have questions about your paper or anything, give us a call at 877-469-6133. If you'd like to share your thoughts from today or you have additional questions, listen, this is the first time we've done a virtual Rose program, so let us know what you think. Please email us at events@scng.com. Thanks again for your support, and please enjoy the Rose Parade. Have a great day.